Well, hello there. This is D. How you doing? You know, a lot of people are struggling in this world with life, anxiety, and just being human. Many of us feel isolated and alone and welcome the sound of a friendly voice. Someone who's been there, who's still there, and who is seeking solutions just like the rest of us. Not some expert doctor or psychotherapist who claims to have all the answers, but just an average human being who gets it and believes that together we just might be able to make this life a little bit better. Welcome to Uneven. Uneven is a podcast for those of us who find life a bit more complicated than the rest, a bit more unbalanced, a bit uneven. Thanks for stopping by to check us out, and I hope I can provide you with a quick intro to this new podcast. We've already released the 36 episodes I recorded earlier this year, what I call the prequel. It was a chance for me to kick the tires a bit and try out a few things. But this is the official kickoff for the podcast. And going forward, our content will be more timely, I promise. But before we learn more about the podcast, I need to tell you just a bit about myself and my experience with anxiety medication, or benzos. While Uneven is not about benzodiazepines, my experience with this medication is what led me to creating this podcast. So give me just a couple of minutes to tell you a bit about myself. Thanks. My name is D.E. Foster, but I go by D. Just the initial, nothing fancy. It's a nickname my nephews gave me when they were young, and I guess it stuck. I'm a former database programmer, screenwriter, college instructor, drummer, and on and on. Basically a nomad career-wise. I have struggled with occasional mental health conditions throughout my life. ADHD, OCD, complications from an alcoholic parent, and of course, anxiety. And more recently, BIND, Benzodiazepine-Induced Neurological Dysfunction. But perhaps I might need to explain that to you a bit more. 22 years ago, my doctor prescribed me clonazepam or Klonopin for stomach distress, and I took the medication for 12 years as directed. I had no idea and no warning that it could cause physical dependence, or that the next 10 years of my life would be a living hell at times. After learning of its possible effects, I tapered off Klonopin in 2014, and my withdrawal was extreme. I've improved slowly over the past 10 years, but I still struggle with neurological damage, a condition we now call BIND. Over the past decade, I've lost more than a few friends to benzos, including one just last month. And it's for them that I still do this. Unable to return to my previous professions due to my condition, I focused on the benzo community and tried to help out as best I could. I published a book on benzos titled Benzo Free, launched the Benzo Free podcast, which is now in its 6th year, helped create a few benzo organizations, and been a member of multiple research teams, authoring several published papers, including the one that identified the condition which I struggle with today, BIND. I currently live in northern Colorado with my adequate wife. Yes, she told me to say that. She's actually kind of amazing, but don't tell her I said that. And my dog, Murphy. And I'm, well, doing okay. All right, enough about me. What about Uneven? Uneven is something, well, different. You know, working with benzos and the people struggling to come off those drugs, the area where I found I could make the biggest difference was in helping them to manage their anxiety. For these individuals, anxiety can be extreme, as it was for me. And I soon found that by helping them manage their anxiety, even just a little bit, I could help their condition overall, enough so that they could allow their bodies and minds to start healing. So for a few years now, I've wanted to start a new podcast, a podcast that I really wanted to do, a podcast that isn't about benzos, but is focused on life, focused on anxiety, and focused on the complexities of just being human. On this podcast, we will discuss a variety of topics, share personal stories of struggles and successes, interview guests, review books, blogs, movies, whatever, all in the name of providing a connection in this sea of chaos. So, how do I approach this podcast? Well, I thought of 5 quick tenets. They may change over time, as will the podcast, but for now, these are my guideposts. So let me tell you about them really quick. 1, raw, honest, and unfiltered. This is me, warts and all, and I'm not afraid to share that. I will always strive to be honest and real because there's already too much fake out there. I'm old enough to be comfortable in my own skin and to accept myself as I am. We also will not use AI for any of our recordings or material. This podcast is recorded by a real human, and it will remain that way. We will do research and cite references when available, but this is just me, flaws and all. Number 2, balance and moderation. Perhaps one of the primary values in this podcast is that of finding balance in life. Our modern world is ruled by the extremes. I'm independent, a moderate, and always have been. I believe every story has 2 sides, and I want to hear both of them. Wisdom can come from any place, anytime, any way. Religion, science, philosophy, psychology, medicine, pop culture, the squirrel collecting nuts on the back fence. It doesn't matter where you find it if it rings true for you. We are different, and we have different needs, different wants, and different paths. One size does not fit all. It never has. Know where you stand up for what you believe, but do so with an open mind. Number 3, any topic, any time. I'm not seeking conflict or controversy, but I'm also not afraid to discuss things, or even be called out, or even canceled. Some aspects of life are not PC, not suitable for proper society, as we used to say. But I don't want to be limited by those rules. Life is ugly sometimes, and I think we need to be able to talk about that. This does not include attacking, calling out, or public shaming in any way. I don't do that. That's not me. But I will talk about topics that may be a bit off limits to some, even if it means I lose a few folks along the way. Number 4, compassionate responsibility. Now, I came up with this term as I was developing this podcast. It's not a great term, but I think it works for now. My approach to managing life and anxiety in all of its intricacies is twofold. First off, compassion. Having compassion and kindness for others is a cornerstone of this podcast. We are not here to call out, embarrass, or demean anyone. Life is hard. It's hard enough. And for those who struggle with anxiety and other conditions, it can seem almost unbearable at times. Why would I want to make anyone's life harder than it already is? But there also needs to be responsibility. Each of us is responsible for our communities, for our families and friends, and most of all, for ourselves. Blame and victimhood help no one, and far too often make the situation worse. And finally, number 5, we return to where we started with a friendly voice. If there's one thing that I want this podcast to be known for, it's that. For many people, that's all they need. Just to know somebody's out there they can listen to, who's been there, who's still there, and who gets it. Not somebody with all the answers, that's not me, but instead, somebody who can connect and relate to them, and together, maybe find a few answers along the way. Well, that's all I have for now. I hope you'll give Uneven a chance. Go back and listen to the first 36 episodes if you like, or start with this one going forward. Either way, thank you. The Uneven Podcast is part of the Easing Anxiety Network at easinganxiety.com. You can also follow us on our YouTube channel and on X by the handle @easinganx. That's @easinganx. I hope you'll check us out. Take it easy, take care of yourself, and I'll see you next time.